And we're live.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Clearview Township Council meeting for Monday, June the 8th, 2020. Of course, this is a live streamed Zoom format meeting, as we are meeting in the COVID-19 restrictions on teleconference. All members of council are with us. Just for information, Councillor Deneen, her video is not working properly, so she is joining us by audio, and we will try to monitor for her during our voting processes, and we'll also listen for her if she wishes to speak. So we'll have to just keep that in mind, Council. And Madam Clerk, if we could just keep monitoring the status of the meeting on the tools, and you can advise if we lose anybody. Okay. All right, so Council, welcome. Nice to see you. You all have the agenda. So at this point, I'm going to move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. So I will read the recommendation, look for a mover and seconder. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated June the 8th, 2020 as presented. The mover be Councillor Broderick and seconded by Councillor Lamers. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Councillor Deneen, please just say yes or no. And I don't hear Councillor Deneen. Unfortunately, she's still not there. Anyway, that motion carries. So we'll continue to monitor to see if we can get Councillor Deneen on there.
I'm here now.
Okay, thank you very much. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Any members of council? Councillor Leishman, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, item, I'm sorry. Let me just find it here. Item, where was it? Oh, item Parks, Culture and Recreation, PCR 010-2020. I will have to declare a conflict of interest as we belong to the South Georgian Bay Tourist Association.
Okay, Councillor Leishman, thank you very much for that. And if I forget, just mention that again when we get to that item. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Leishman. Any further on just disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, if anything comes up during the council meeting, please bring it forward and we'll deal with it at that time. Item number 4 is our public participation period. As this is a teleconference meeting, the public participation period is limited to information that's sent in to our clerk's department through the web portal. And at this time, we have none that have qualified for receiving at this time. I understand through the clerk that there was one that had arrived sometime after 12 o'clock, which does pass the deadline, and we will deal with that question at our next council meeting. So at this time, there are no public participation questions. So item number 5 is deputations and presentations. We have none. And then item number 6 is our public meeting, which is scheduled for 6:30. So we will move on in the agenda and deal with other issues until we come back to that meeting at 6:30. Council, moving on to our agenda, page number 2 is item number 7, approval of the minutes of the council meeting for May 25th, 2020. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the minutes of the May 25th, 2020 council meeting as presented. And looking for a mover and seconder, that'll be Councillor Broderick and Councillor Leishman, I see. Any questions? Council, seeing none, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Deneen, and thank you, motion carried. And where are we at? Okay, item number 8 is a business arising from the minutes, if any. Any members of council have any business they'd like to bring forward at this time? And seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 9 is communications from the mayor. There are no items for me to report to you at this time that are pressing urgent items, other than I will advise you that I have been invited to participate in the Rural Ontario Medical Programs event. They have an event coming up on the 17th, so I've been invited to sit in on that. As you know, Council Clearview is part of the partnership that helps support the Collingwood General Marine Hospital, and obviously doctors and young doctors moving to our community is very important. So I thought I would sit in on that meeting, so that's something I just wanted to report to you. And also tomorrow will be a county council meeting. So that takes us directly to item number 10, which is our county report for information. I'll turn to our Deputy Mayor, Barry Burton, who's also our Deputy Warden. Mr. Deputy Ward, have you got anything to report?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, no, I pretty much reported everything that's you received today. I reported it all at our last meeting. If you see the review that was sent out, county information, you all received a copy of it. Talks about the forestry and the other issues that I talked about last time. So nothing really new because our meeting is tomorrow and we'll be dealing with new stuff tomorrow. So, but nothing that I can officially talk about at this stage. So other than what I've covered last week and what's in the county report.
All right, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Burton. Any questions of the Deputy Mayor from members of council? All right, seeing none, there's a motion. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive the county highlights from May 26, 2020 for information. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Walker. Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. I'm just pausing again so that I can hear Councillor Deneen indicate her vote because she is on some IT technology problems there. So we're hopefully we'll get that solved. All right, Council. Item 11 is our council reports and community announcements. So let's start with board reports. I'm going to start with the Deputy Mayor since you just spoke. Is there anything you'd like to add, Deputy Mayor?
No, I don't think so at this time. I will tell you that I've received numerous emails in support of AutoSolve and the decision that we made last week to, not proceed with the temporary bylaw. So I've received emails and comments about that. And but other than that, no, it's been a pretty quiet week other than what we were dealing with at county.
Oh, thank you very much. Councillor Walker, would you like to go next, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I really don't have anything either other than just remember to keep supporting your local businesses through this next phase, which I believe is going to start on Friday. So let's just hope that the small businesses can work things out so that they are able to continue serving the public that they do now as best they can. So just continue to support the local businesses.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. Excellent. Councillor Broderick, you'll be next. Hello, Councillor Broderick. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I have nothing to report at this time.
All right. Hope you're having a great day. Councillor Lamers, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. On May 28th, we had an evening hall board meeting, virtual meeting, and they were looking for some information, but that's going to be coming up later in our agenda. And then on May 30th, I watched a Zoom video on a funeral, which is really different. And then afterwards, we went and socialized or social distanced at the funeral, at the burial site, but it was quite different. Times are really changing.
Wow, we're all adjusting to how we interact socially. Wow, that's impressive. Well, our condolences and thank you very much for your report. Councillor Leishman, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi. Okay, so I haven't really done much except I've been in touch with my constituents and trying to update them on the health unit information that we get. For the most part, I give it to them because it has a lot of sites on it that take you to other places that give you more information on different things. So, and one of the pieces of information was mental health for your child. And I'm having grandchildren and knowing how they're stressing out on and off. I understand that. And I understand how important it is for parents to lighten up on the schoolwork. Don't worry about it. Summer's coming, the good weather's here. you'll be lucky to get your kids to sit down and do stuff. My grandson's good for 5 minutes. So don't worry about it. Enjoy yourselves. Learning will come anyway. You're teaching them while you're at home. We all know that. Because I'm getting a few phone calls about that. I have met a lot of young entrepreneurs, a lot of them online. Obviously, I'm not really going out anywhere yet. I'm still keeping isolated, but I've seen a lot of things. I've somehow got hooked up on Instagram, and I'm getting all these wonderful things from all these wonderful young entrepreneurs. And boy, do they really know how to put themselves out there. Let's face it, starting a business right now is not the easiest thing to do. So if they can get some orders from doing that, well, good on them. So, and we're also doing our bit by ordering food once a week at least. So yeah, support our local businesses and be positive, folks. It's going to go. I mean, we're lightening up this week. We're lightening up. So put a smile on. Weather's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leishman. I'm glad to see that you're looking really great and feeling really well too. I can tell. Good for you. Councillor Mckechnie, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's been fairly quiet in Ward 2 as well. I will note though that tomorrow we have an accessibility meeting, and Your Worship, hopefully you'll be able to attend that as well. I know that we're going to have the representatives from the Village Green there, and just to talk to us and address our concerns about accessibility regarding the Village Green project. Also tomorrow there's going to be a BIA meeting, and with regards to the announcement that came out of Queen's Park that things will be going to stage 2, I guess it is, on Friday. Outdoor patios will be allowed to open. I understand. I don't have any other details, so it'll be an interesting meeting. I assume tomorrow night at our BIA meeting, and I'm looking forward to that. Lastly, 2728 Side Road. I see the Works Department have been working on that, and very much appreciated. I know the residents along that side road appreciate all the work that's been going on there. So other than that, it's been fairly quiet in Ward 2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mckechnie. I will try to attend the meeting with the BIA. Tomorrow I have 3 meetings scheduled right now, and that would be a 4th. So I will see if I can join you on that meeting, because we're certainly interested to know what the BIA is hoping to do during this recovery period, and we'll be supportive of them. Thank you very much. And one other thing too, the 2728 Side Road, I was across it today, and it looks great. So I'm glad they're doing that work. Thank you for bringing that up. Tom, we're going to go to you in a moment. I'm thinking I would like to go to Phyllis right now. If Phyllis Deneen, if you're prepared to give us a report, Councillor Deneen, are you there?
I am. It keeps popping in and out, but I'm getting I'm getting everything from everyone. Can I go ahead and you can just tell me if it
Yeah.
bounces out?
Go
Okay.
ahead. We can hear you fine. If you want to go ahead, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks. I just want to give a good shout out to Amanda. She went and took toolkits to all our businesses on our little main street in Ottawa here. She visited Green Hawk. She went to D&L Variety, and she also went to, she turned
I believe we lost Phyllis at that point, but I can support her in saying that we certainly Dovetails and the Door Knock have received their packages as well. So it's great to see. Hopefully, Councillor Deneen can join back with us.
Hi.
Councillor, okay, go ahead.
Okay, Amanda was really good with toolkits. She came out one week and to D&L Variety and Dovetail Interiors for it. And the shows the no, he came back again there and again Door Knock.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Deneen, for trying, and I appreciate you giving us a little bit of an update from Ottawa and the Ward 1 area. Please,
And I keep popping out. I'm going to leave the meeting again. I'm going to try and reboot my internet. So I apologize, but I guess
no.
quorum will be there, and I'll
Yeah.
be back as soon as I can.
no
Thanks.
problem. Thanks very much, Councillor Janine. And then just for the benefit of every member of council, if at any time you feel you need to get up or, go to the kitchen and come back or whatever, don't worry about that. We'll continue to carry on the meetings as we always do and do our best. So thank you. We want to make sure you remain comfortable too. Okay, Councillor Patterson, you're next. Would you like to give us a ward report, Councillor Patterson?
Okay, thank you. I have had some discussion with our local businesses. It's kind of, it's usually pretty encouraging. I know the businesses, the restaurants are doing fairly well. They're keeping their head above water, as one said, with their takeout. Several have mentioned use of the sidewalk, and this direct this possibly to Councillor Mckechnie when you have your BIA meeting. I know that we do give permission as long as we keep the walking space open that meanders on the sidewalk, 1.5 feet, or 1.5 meters, I believe. However, there may be some general interest, so I hope the BIA puts it on the agenda and discuss it, and then comes back to the township to see if there's anything that we can do in terms of the use of the sidewalk, or even in the case of bicycle traffic, 1 or 2 car spots. So Councillor Mckechnie, I may just fill you in a little bit more. I've been getting a few conversations there on Mill Street. I did have a meeting with the village group, just a one-on-one with Stu Lazier, and we did talk about parking spots, AODA compliance. I asked him to make sure that any plans he's sending on, and I understand those plans are in with counties, with our staff, that they also send them to the accessibility committee for their review. So I understand that you may have gotten a letter from him. Made a video today for the NCPS graduation. I guess they're sharing the video rendition of their graduation ceremony, 7 o'clock on the June 24th. So that's going on. I received 1 written and 2 verbal complaints, or let's say notifications, about the kids using the playground equipment. I haven't seen it myself. I have talked to a couple of parents who didn't express any frustration that the playground equipment wasn't open. They did. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that they thought that was reasonable. However, some people are looking out for the kids, so I guess they noticed that the one complaint that was written said they were unaccompanied by parents. So I guess all we can do is keep a watchful eye on it, but it is, I believe our position is that it's the parents' responsibility to obey the signs that are up there. Traffic issues continue to be talked about. I believe one of the local groups may want to make representation at the next meeting. We'll see. I'm working with them, mostly with regards to traffic on our street in Creemore. I'm glad to see the dog park is open in Stayner. We do have some persistent issues with people turning private property into dog parks, and I'll continue that conversation with the Parks Department. I think that's kind of the array of, that's it for me, I think, for the ward report.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. So now we move on to 11.2, which is Councillor Patterson has provided a report. So Councillor Patterson, I will read your recommendation and your recommendation. And I assume you'll be moving it, so I'll ask for a seconder afterwards, and then we'll have a discussion. All right, recommendation Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive a COU 005-2020 Clearview Social Housing Strategy Report for information. Item 2, direct staff to work with the County Social and Community Services Group to facilitate a social housing workshop session. And item 3, that the session be scheduled prior to and in preparation for the upcoming strategic budget planning workshop. Just confirming, Councillor Patterson, you're moving this? Yes, seconder. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Mckechnie and Councillor Lamers. I'll go with Councillor Mckechnie. I saw it first. Thank you very much. Council, we have a report. I'll give the benefit of the request to speak. Mr. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the motion. It says social housing report, and I would like it to say social and affordable housing. The social housing and affordable housing are two separate things, and county is involved in both of them, affordable and social housing. So if we could add the word affordable along with including social and affordable housing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's a friendly amendment. So the mover and seconder, Patterson and Mckechnie, any questions? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I am comfortable with it, but I will say following the, which is really the reason why I'm asking for this, following the program that the county has, they list, and in fact, they go into some detail about what affordability is within social housing. So I have no problem adding the word. We can talk later when all the others are finished. Any differentiation between affordable housing, which is within the social context, and attainable housing, which would be outside the county's social program, but perhaps something that we would be interested in talking about as well. But that's not the intent of my motion. So I accept the friendly motion.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, if you could record that in item number 2 of the motion where it says direct staff to work with the county social and community services group to facilitate a social and affordable housing workshop session. Deputy Mayor, that's what you were looking for, correct? Thank you.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, mover and second.
Okay, Councillor Lamers had a request to speak, Tom, and then we'll go to him. Go ahead, Councillor Lamers.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you go into the background, just under 3, it's got housing assistance options, including rental subsidies geared to income housing, affordable home ownership, and housing for seniors.
Okay. Tom, and then Barry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, yes, Council Lamers is correct. But the Deputy Mayor may be on to a different subject. So if I can ask him to, so he's right when he talks about affordable housing with regards to this motion in the envelope of social housing. But if he's talking about affordable housing outside the county's social program, then I'd like to hear that clarification.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. No, I'm quite aware of what the report says and everything that's listed in it. No, clearly it's within the social, the social confines of what county offers in affordable housing and social housing. And I know at county, we look at them as two separate things, affordable housing and social housing. So, yeah, it's strictly within the, the dimensions of what county is doing.
Thank you.
All right. Now that we've gone through that, Tom, would you like to speak to your report?
If I may, I'll reserve comment until after from council.
Thank you. Any other members of council have any questions of the report? I don't see any hands or requests to speak. All right, I'll bring you mine then. I have a question for the councillor. I think that the report has some validity to it. I think that it's an important topic for sure. I'm very confused why, Tom, this would come forward when we are going to be going to a priority workshop where we're going to be dealing with the budget strategy and setting the priorities for budgets in the future. This was something that you brought up, and you lobbied to have us do a strategy session on our budget and strategy on our priorities. And so now I find the report and the motion predetermines that you're setting this as a priority before we even get to the discussion of what priorities we have. So I don't understand, Councillor Patterson, why you would call for us to go to a special meeting, and council agreed, and now we're predetermining what the priorities are in our priority meeting. Councillor.
Well, you'll notice that my original intent on this subject was to put forward a notice of motion, and in there were the words that we declare it a priority.
Yes.
But it also had the provision that we do that by preparing a report, so we all understood exactly the dimensions of the program that we're about to be funding. But I have not said that in this motion. I withdrew my notice of motion. I submitted my strategy or my report to simply say that that we have a workshop just to discuss in more detail than we are able to during these meetings, the concept of social housing. I say that because going into the strategic, you're pointing out rightly that any priority setting should be done at the strategic budget planning session. Each one of the bigger subjects that we have to discuss, whether it be the small halls, the investment, the continuing investment in the small halls, what's the likely outcome for our wastewater treatment plant in Creemore, even the Collingwood Street Bridge. Every one of those bigger subjects, large capital programs, have a staff report and an engineering report in some cases attached to them. So council has sufficient detail to start setting priorities based on the facts that have been presented to us. The one that isn't that clear is social housing, or social housing and affordable housing. And as I think most of you know, that the county's program has several ways in which to provide social and affordable housing, senior housing, geared to income housing, senior assistance housing programs. And I think it would be important to have a session prior to our budget, just so that we're on the same page. And we have resources available to us, as the deputy mayor knows and the mayor knows, in the county. I had a prior discussion with staff as well, with CAO Sage, and he agreed if council is so inclined to make the contact with the staff in the county and ask them to come and give us a session, a workshop session. It doesn't have to be, I think it would be in more detail than we need to do at the budget, and too much detail that we can do at a council meeting. So it's just a way of not setting a priority, but getting prepared for the budget review on this subject that we really haven't gotten into the details with.
All right, I receive your answer and I accept it. I find that this whole discussion continues to circle around about the priorities that we need to set. And so I have proposed a date of July the 20th, which I will probably be withdrawing as a date, given we need to be able to have a meeting, and I believe in person, to have this priority setting session. I don't believe this format, where we are separated by a video screen and separated by the distractions of each of our own homes, is something that will serve the community the best, to have a meeting to talk about priorities. So on the topic of when we host that meeting, it's still to be announced. That being said, it's certainly going to be pushed back if council approves this motion, because now we're going to be needing to schedule this session prior to that session. So keep your calendars handy, council, and that's all the advice that I can give to you. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, if I just may say, Your Worship, that I think it's not wise to set a meeting in July, as most people are on holidays, as I will be on holidays, and we usually don't have a council meeting in July. So I would suggest that whenever the meeting is, would be after the month of July.
All right. All right. If I may, unless there's any other members of council, any questions? All right. All right, then I'm prepared to call the motion. Members of council, you've heard the motion as amended with a friendly amendment. The motion has a mover and seconder. I don't think I need to read it again. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. And the motion carries. Thank you, council. Since we're still talking and I haven't moved on to the next subject, if I may, Mr. CAO, or perhaps Kelly McDonald, I believe you're on board, the clerk or the treasurer. Could you just update us on when you would like a budget presentation to council, when you feel staff will be looking at doing a budget presentation to council? That's usually the end of September, 1st of October, Mr. Sage, is that right?
Yes, Your Worship. I'd let Kelly speak to that, but normally the Treasury Department directs senior staff to provide our items early in September. So obviously council would have to give us some direction previous to that.
That's what I'm looking for. Treasurer McDonald, nice to see you this evening. Would you be looking for information from this council from the priority setting meeting? 15th of August is a number, or what are you thinking?
Normally what I'll come to the first meeting of council would be middle to end of October. So if we can get the information at least, say 2 to 3 weeks before that, so I can incorporate it into the first presentations of the budget, that would be fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I will consult with the clerk and perhaps yourself and the CAO, and we'll find some dates to work with the county to host this meeting that's just been asked for, and then the budget priority strategic budget setting meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Council, we're going to move on. Checking the time, 6:03, department reports. We'll move to our Public Works Department report, PW 015, the MECP inspection. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive the 2019 MECP inspection report, PW 020-2020 summary. More information. Is there a mover and seconder on the motion? Oh, Deputy Mayor and Mr. Broderick, Councillor Broderick. All right. Mr. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or is there something you wanted to say something? Go ahead, Mr. Ron. And actually, I see the Deputy Mayor's there. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say kudos to all our staff and a wonderful report, 100% compliance. I don't know, though, I think we're pretty lucky people here in Clearview to have such a successful water operation and headed up by a great team.
Well, there you go. That's a good lead in to hear the head of the department. Mr. Ron, what would you like to say?
Well, first, thank you, Deputy Mayor Burton, through the chair. Can't really say much about the report other than, you know, excellent job by all the staff, and the report was written by Stephanie Schell, our compliance officer, and does a great job making sure we're following all the rules. The actual inspection reports are available if council would like to read them, about 150 pages, so we did not include it with the report.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm sure it's available for viewing if someone did want to see it. Hey, thank you. Any questions of the report, members of council? Again, our congratulations to the staff for all the hard work and diligence in keeping up. You've heard the motion. We have a mover and seconder. Members of council, all those in favor? And Councillor Deneen? Yep, okay. Motion carried.
I'm here. Sorry,
Okay.
I am here, Doug.
Okay, no, I'm just checking in to make sure you're still with us. That
Sorry.
motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Ron, the next one actually is also your department, so let's go to that one. PW 016 2020, the DWQMS Annual Management Report. Recommendation, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive the 2019 Drinking Water Quality Management System, DWQMS Management Review Report for information. A mover and seconder, please. Mr. Broderick and Mr. Walker. Before you go on, I want to mention Mr. Ron. I know you want to speak to this report, but I want to mention, I want to thank Todd Patton, who has been designated as the owner's representative on this management committee. And so council, Todd Patton is representing all of us because we represent the ownership of the water system. So I think that's important to keep that in mind. So if you have any specific questions about the water, Todd is your guy, or you can go to Mike because he's the expert. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we're blessed to have a number of experts in the water field. Again, so this is the management report. It includes the CIO as the CIO and myself and Todd Patton as top management for water systems, obviously representing council. There are some details in this report. So this is how we do things. The other report's about following the rules. So how we do things is kind of outlined in this report. It is audited externally and internally. You'll see in there with the upgrades we've had to our software that we can see the service request by type. So as far as the relationship with council, you know, at a glance, you can see what kind of inquiries we've had, what kind of, call them complaints, we call them service requests. And you'll see that there's very few about water quality. There's a number from billing and those type of things, but we log them all. And it's very important. It is a legal requirement that when people have a request that they call directly to our Public Works office and it gets logged correctly, and that's all audited by the Ministry of Environment. But it's a great report, a great management system we have, and yeah, good job by all.
Right on. Something about the report that caught my attention, Mike, if I may, before I ask for other members. When we do get a sample that has been returned to us with a change or a noticeable occurrence or something that is certainly out of the ordinary, can you give me a timeline on how quickly our staff would react to that discovery?
Certainly. So depending on what it is, an adverse water quality incident, as it's referred to, if it was a bacteria, for instance, you know, it takes 2 days to get the results back from our laboratory. So we take them on a Tuesday. By Thursday at noon, we would know if there was an adverse. And depending on what it is, of course, you know, if it was E. coli, Thursday afternoon, we'd be out at 4 o'clock trying to find that location and other locations in the area to resample. And we would issue advisories as required. If it was a chemical physical, some of those take longer, but as soon as we get the results, we act on them within a day. And there's reporting requirements both through phone and fax to both the health unit and the Ministry of Environment whenever that happens. So it's very, very regulated and monitored.
Yeah. Another technical item I wanted to ask is our Scada system, which of course monitors activity at each of our remote wellheads and so on. Can you just update me? We have been undergoing a renewal program on the Scada. How's that program coming?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you for bringing that up. So the Scada system is all through broadband, point-to-point broadband. So we have a tower at every single site. So we have, I think, 10 sites in the township that have a tower. And we have a private network on those towers to relay information back to our Public Works building. At any given time, one of the operators can just pick their phone up and they can tell you exactly how much chlorine's in the system, how much water's in the reservoir, and which pumps are running anywhere. And that's very important when it comes to alarming, because if there's a low chlorine, you know, it's legislation. The chlorine analyzers run non-stop, so continuous. And if one of them dips, the operator has to react within half an hour. And the Scada system is what keeps all this working. The thing with the broadband, so it's line of sight communication. And as the trees get taller, we have to make our our towers taller. You know, a lot of people don't like the term tower, but the most recent ones we have, you know, the pad is only 1.2 meters across, 4 feet. The towers are, you know, they used to be like TV antennas. If you remember the triangle antennas we used to have around our houses. They're now a little bit more substantial, similar to the one you would see if you've even noticed it behind the administration center. There's one there. It's one of the ones we bounce off of. But yeah, as with all of our infrastructure, there's a life cycle and we have to maintain it in a fit state of repair, I guess.
Has to be safe. So I appreciate the work that we're doing. Okay, and again, this report represents us as the owners of the water system, and so it's a critical report. And it's good to see that the management do this annual review. So thank you for the report. Are there any members of council with any questions of Mike or other staff? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mike. The motion's been read. I believe I have a seconder, a mover and seconder, so I'll call the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
That motion was carried unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Mr. Ron, and everybody in the department that looks after our water service. We've still got a few more minutes before our public meeting, so we'll move on the agenda. Underneath Parks, Culture, and Recreation, we have a report. Mr. Vachon is joining us. Nice to see you this evening, Terry. I believe Amanda is on board somewhere. She's there somewhere too. So let's get to this report, and we'll receive this report. PCR 009-2020, the Small Hall Festival for 2020. Recommendation. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive PCR 009-2020 Small Halls Festival 2020 report for information, and item number 2, approve canceling the Small Hall Festival for 2020 and transferring, item 3, transferring $25,000 from the 2020 festival and events operating budget to a reserve for the 2021 events season. Can I get a mover and a seconder on this motion? Deputy Mayor, Mr. Broderick. All right, this is a difficult motion for me, but I appreciate why we're here. Mr. Vachon, perhaps you could outline the report and we can then take any questions from members of council. Go ahead, Terry.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship, and hi, Council. It's been a while since we've seen you all. So yes, I've asked also Miss Murray to join us. So I noticed she hasn't activated. Oh, there we go.
There she is.
So yeah, Your Worship, as you can tell, this was a very hard report for us to do. As you can tell, we're down at the 11th hour making this recommendation to council. We kind of held off for as long as we possibly can. Obviously, our event is late in September, so we had a little bit of time, but Miss Murray has done an excellent job meeting with our stakeholders and turning every stone to see if this was doable. And unfortunately, council has in front of them a recommendation from our stakeholders as well as staff to recommend canceling it for this year. So if Amanda wants to add anything else, she sure can, and we're both available for questions.
Thanks very much, Mr. Vachon. Hello there, Ms. Murray. Nice to have you join us. I'm sorry that you're joining us to tell us about this news, but perhaps you could outline for us some of the steps that has gone into preparing this recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. As Terry alluded to, we have held off on this report as long as we could. In fact, in the early part of May, we did have a Zoom meeting with the hall boards as well as the 10 additional community partners that were invited. A number of options were presented. There have been festivals that have shifted towards a digital or a virtual platform. We just believe that our brand promise is providing an award-winning festival that really showcases the halls, and the best experience is to actually have those doors open. Just with the ongoing health concerns, the pandemic, the fact that even mass gatherings are still limited, there's just not a lot of opportunity to present a festival. And this is crunch time in the festival world. We need to confirm grants, sponsorship. We need to set our ticket sale strategy in motion. And at this point, we just can't guarantee the health and safety of our partners or the guests that are coming into our into our township. So as a result, it is a really difficult decision. It's certainly the first time I've had to recommend canceling an event due to a pandemic, and hopefully it's the last time. And I am looking for council support that we also move the funds to 2021 as a reserve as well. Happy to answer any questions or comments that council has.
Thank you very much. All right, I appreciate the work that's gone into preparing this. So thank you for both being available to answer questions. I saw Councillor Leishman, and I'm looking for anybody else. Okay, and Councillor Patterson. Councillor Leishman, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through to Amanda and Terry. I'm really sorry that you've had to cancel. I know that a lot of the halls were looking forward to this, and I know some of the planning had already started. But I know that booking people and then having to cancel them is not the thing we should want to do, unfortunately. So I'm glad we came up to this decision. It would have been a little dicey holding it, and I know it wasn't easy. I do know it wasn't easy, not for you or the hall board members or any of our other participants. So thank you so much for making this tough decision, and I don't envy you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, kudos. Okay, Councillor Patterson, I believe you're next, but he just disappeared. Was Councillor Patterson? There you are. Councillor Patterson, you're up next.
Thank you.
Was there just for a moment, is there anybody else with questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, Amanda. At your meeting on May 15th, I think I heard you say there were 10 other community partners. Did they, I have two questions. Did they include representation from the artist community? I assume they included the BIA and the chamber. Is that the kind of community partners you were talking about?
So through you, your worship, the BIA and the chamber are not actually, in fact, partners of the Small Halls Festival. The partnerships that were included were the Purple Hills Arts and Heritage Society, the Clearview Public Library Board, the Lions Club, the Kinsmen, the Singhampton Community Center, etc. So the community partners that we work directly with to provide programming. The BIA and the chamber and our sponsors will be notified if this report is approved about the cancellation of the festival. The arts community had already given me feedback about the Small Halls Festival. They knew that they were going to be canceling the Creemore Festival of the Art quite a few months ago. So I also took that into advisement, knowing that they would not be using the Dunedin Hall or Station on the Green for the Small Halls Festival.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
And the reason I was asking is because, can you give us a sense, was there obviously reluctance, but generally unanimity in our decision, or were there any, because many groups, as you know, the success of it is they benefit from it. Were there any that were not in favor of doing this? They stated some hardships.
So I would say that the halls are understanding in the sense that it's a health crisis. They are concerned that this will potentially have a negative impact on their fundraising capabilities, especially some of our very small halls who produce very large events, and they generate a lot of profit through the sale of tickets and the sale of food and beverage at those events. Definitely our partners like the Lions Club and Purple Hills Arts and Heritage Society, they rely on the Small Halls Festival as a way to also promote their organization and to be affiliated with something larger than their own organization. So I guess in that case, there was some, I don't want to use the word reluctancy, but there was just some hesitation about making the notice to cancel. However, in general, everybody was on board with this, but there is concerns that there will be a lack of fundraising opportunities for 2020 because this festival and many other fundraising opportunities have been canceled. So that would be the biggest concern, is related to their bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that very good answer. Any other members of council have any questions for our staff? I see none. I'll ask one question. We last talked about the Small Hall Festival when you gave us a report regarding the 2019 festival. And so could you outline, Mr. Vachon, what report you may be bringing forward, which would indicate the budget for the 2020 festival? Now, we're not hosting it, but certainly has there been any expenses already incurred in regards to this festival prior to this decision tonight? Or what type of report would we see as part of our budget package that will support us moving ahead in 2021?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm not aware of any expenses that we've incurred in 2020 for the 2020 event. Perhaps Ms. Murray can add. There might be some little minor stuff, but there hasn't been any expenses in 2020. And to be honest, Your Worship, we haven't had a chance to talk about 2021 yet. We don't know what that report's going to look like. First step is to see if this pandemic is going to actually end and if there's not a second or third wave. So I think we're taking it step by step. But as soon as we start to have those discussions, Your Worship, we will definitely come back to council and start sharing some ideas. I think we can also use our 2021 budget meetings as well, and maybe brief council at that point in time as well to see if, what we're thinking for 2021.
Fair enough. All right. So there'll be, thank you very much for that, Terry. Council, there'll be no question in regards to the transferring of the funds into the 2020 event fund. That's in the motion. So we'll look forward to seeing that show up in our budget discussions, and we can then deliberate how we handle that at that time. So it's just basically set aside as a reserve. Thank you. Thankfully. All right. Okay, listen, good discussion. I'm personally disappointed that we have to do this. Of course, we have to do this. There's so many things about this pandemic that are very disappointing. And this is just one of now many. And there's a whole book of them, that it's just unfortunate. And it's the right decision that we have to make today. And it's the right thing to do to cancel it at this time. Council, you've heard the motion. We've got a mover and seconder. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
Okay, that was unanimous. Motion carries. Terry and Amanda, thank you very much. Please continue to represent us as you do so well in regards to festivals and events. We will get back to this, Amanda. We will get back to doing these things in our community one day. Thank you very much. Okay, Council, we have another report in the same department. PCR 010, it's the South Georgian Bay Tourism Regional Recovery and Resiliency Plan. The recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, receive PCR 010-2020, the South Georgian Bay Tourism Regional Recovery and Resiliency Plan report for information. And item 2, approve the municipal funding contribution of $7,000 from the Economic Development Operational Budget. Mover and seconder on this motion. That would be Deputy Mayor, and I see Councillor Lamers. Thank you. Go ahead, Terry. Please advise us where we're going with this one. This is a good report.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Again, this is Mrs. Murray's report. She's done an excellent job in providing some detailed information in her report. Ms. Murray sits on the South Georgian Bay Tourism Board. With Council Leishman, obviously, and I'll let her explain a little bit of her report. And I think this is an excellent initiative, and on behalf of the department, we really recommend this moving this project forward.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I'm quite confident that Ms. Murray doesn't just sit on the board; she works on the board. Ms. Murray, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And once again, this report for Council is to outline the multiple approaches that South Georgian Bay Tourism Association, or SGBTA, is taking to support our tourism economy with recovery and resiliency. And specifically, our plan that the Board of Directors is supporting, and they are asking that each of the 5 municipalities contribute directly to funding this recovery plan so that there would be no additional cost to the tourism operators and local businesses within Clearview, Wasaga Beach, the town of Collingwood, the municipality of Meaford, and the town of Blue Mountains. The $7,000 that we're contributing will amount to 35 overall amongst the 5 municipalities. And the RTO 7, which is our regional tourism office for Bruce, Grey, and Simcoe County, they will be matching, providing leveraged funding in the amount of just over $13,000. What we really see as valuable is the fact that it is multifaceted. It's a very robust plan. As I outlined in the report, we want this plan to be the gold standard for the region of South Georgian Bay. We want to make sure that our tourism industry survives this pandemic, that when the season is right, we will be welcoming visitors back. And in order for us to do that, we need to ensure that our own local economy and our own local residents are still supporting businesses. The campaign has many different aspects, which I have included the entire list. So I'm happy to answer any questions about specific details. But in general, it's a video campaign. It's very heavily focused on digital marketing. It does speak to hiring brand influencers and bloggers to come into the region and to highlight the tourism operators and the different experiences that people can have across South Georgian Bay. And we have a lot to offer in Clearview Township, which is why I think it's so valuable that our contribution is at that $7,000 and that we can help protect and preserve the visitor economy, not only for Clearview, but for the rest of South Georgian Bay. It also speaks to the fact that unfortunately, in the tourism industry right now, there is a lot of support given to businesses, and rightfully so. But unfortunately, there has been a lack of direct financial support for DMOs, destination marketing organizations such as ourselves. And this partnership amongst the 5 municipalities with RTO 7 is a step in the right direction. And I think it's really important that our township review the information that's contained within the report, and that hopefully you make a positive decision in supporting this with a $7,000 financial contribution. So happy to answer any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray. That's great work. And there's no doubt we are a partner when it comes to tourism activities in this region. And we need to be there. Okay, members of council, do you have any questions of either Mr. Vachon or Ms. Murray in regards to the report? I see Councillor Patterson. Anybody else? Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Amanda, just last meeting, we had a representation from the Institute of South Georgian Bay. They presented a roadmap. Is there what's the direct or indirect association with them?
Good question. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Ms. Murray or Mr. Vachon?
Yes, so through you, Mayor, to Councillor Patterson, these would be similar plans in the sense of strengthening the entire region. However, the South Georgian Bay Tourism Plan is very focused, I would say hyper-focused on supporting the tourism industry. And we see that as being one of the direct and immediate benefits to supporting the region at large. South Georgian Bay is a area that has a high level of employment. There is a high level of the economy that relies on the tourist industry. And although I appreciate all the other work that the social services and the different networks are doing, the South Georgian Bay Recovery and Resiliency Plan will single-handedly support those direct tourism operators and the businesses and the stakeholders that make up the whole fabric across 5 different municipalities. So they're somewhat similar, but I really do see this, like I put in my report, as being the gold standard for supporting our regional economy.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. Councillor Patterson, you comfortable? Thank you. Anybody else? Or yes, Tom?
I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other members of council with any other questions on this? All right. I'll just put it out there, and Mr. CIO, if you'd like to jump in regards to the economic development operations budget, can you give me an update on the status of that? I don't know if you would have that at your fingertips where you are, but certainly we're within range to have $7,000 applied to that. Is that correct?
Your worship, even if I was sitting in the office, I wouldn't have the exact number at my fingertips, but we have not used many of the funds out of the economic development operating budget this year, so there will be no problem funding this project.
All right, just to be confirmed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, Council, you've heard the motion. You've heard the report. Is there anything further? And I'm prepared to call the motion. Members of Council, there's a mover and a seconder. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion carries. All right. A couple of members. Thank you very much, Terry and Amanda, and have a great day. Thank you very much for joining us here at our council meeting tonight. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda for you guys, but thank you. Please hang in there if you like. Okay, council, it is 6:31. So at this time, we're going to go back to page 1 of our agenda, and we will see that we have a public meeting. Now, it's item number 4, and as this is a teleconference meeting, a procedure was adopted and to allow us to continue to do public meetings as per the Planning Act. Our director is here, Mayor Burton. Thank you for joining us. And so we are going to try to do our best to continue to follow the traditional way of doing things. I will pass the meeting over to our deputy mayor, who is usually the chair of our public meeting portions, and then we'll hear from our staff, and we do have an opportunity for public participation. All right, so we're going to go to a public meeting at this time. It is 6:32, and I'll pass the chair over to the Deputy Mayor Burton to conduct the public meeting. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. We will now initiate the public meeting portion of tonight's agenda. We thank everyone who provided written comments ahead of tonight's public meeting on the proposed sign bylaw being presented tonight. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Township of Clearview on the proposed sign bylaw, please contact our Director of Community Services, Mayor Burton, at mburton@clearview.ca. The following public meeting will involve a brief presentation by our planning staff, including a brief explanation of the written comments received and an opportunity for questions by council. I will now call on Director Burton to do the public presentation. We can't hear you, Mara.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Yes, my computer does have a bit of a habit of just muting all on its own. So sometimes I might not even hear you say that. So if someone could wave at me, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Do our best here. So tonight we are looking at a proposed new sign bylaw. And I just want to welcome everyone that's listening and watching virtually on YouTube. And hopefully I can get there we go. Okay. So our current sign bylaw was actually passed in September of 2008, and it's 0849. And the existing bylaw has served the municipality reasonably well these many years. However, there are some new technologies in signage that we would like the new sign bylaw to cover. We're also experiencing more developer signage than ever before, as we've been starting to see more subdivision work take place. We also want to ensure that our signs are safe and not cause a nuisance or any kind of safety issues to traffic or nuisances to neighboring properties. And also the existing bylaw could be simplified by reducing some duplication. We can clarify some provisions and also make it more user-friendly. Now, sign bylaws are passed under the Municipal Act, which is different than the Planning Act, and we are not required to hold a public meeting in this case. However, the municipality always is interested in receiving public input, and so tonight we are hosting this public meeting. Sign bylaws are also retroactive, and therefore council can take the opportunity to reduce some of the sign pollution should the municipality wish to do so. So we have some challenges, and one of the challenges is policing the bylaw. This can be very time extensive. The other challenge is that jurisdiction can be an issue in that we can require approval from the Ministry of Transportation and the county to enforce signage on their properties and along their highways. However, permits are still required from the municipality, whether or not it's within the MTO jurisdiction or the county jurisdiction. They all apply. So some municipalities have also limited the use of temporary signs due to the difficulty in tracking their use. So that's something we did consider in the proposal. So the bylaw proposes a requirement for a fairly simple sign permit. And that would be for all signs except ones that are exempt, unless of course they require a building permit. So simple real estate signs are exempt, home occupation, home industry signs, A-frame signs, banner signs, flag signs, and wire picket signs. And I'll explain what those are a little later on in the report. In addition to the sign permit, of course, a building permit is still required under the Ontario Building Code. And so that hasn't changed. That's always been the case. And if a building permit is required, we are proposing that no additional fee be charged for the permit. We are proposing a very modest permit cost of $100. And if council feels that we need to revisit that or consider that, we're certainly open to that. We also have an opportunity for a sign variance that could come to council. However, compliance is expected, and to date, there have been very few variances to the sign bylaw. It's not the sort of thing you would normally vary. It's not the same as a minor variance to a building in some cases where people really have no other choice. There's usually always another choice. The other thing to consider is digital signs. In the picture on the right-hand side of your screen, the bottom display of the Pepsi ad on the sign is a type of digital sign, and we do have provisions proposed for that. These signs are similar to TV screens. They're capable of full animation, and they can be very distracting and very bright. They are often used to advertise more than the business itself, so they're commonly used for third-party advertisement like a billboard, and in a lot of cases that isn't permitted on our commercial, institutional, or industrial properties, and that's already the case with our existing bylaw. Some of the digital sign provisions proposed is, again, to reduce the sign pollution, is that they wouldn't be permitted for any uses other than for institutional uses. For institutional uses, we're proposing to limit messaging to events that are specific to the site alone, that the digital signs not exceed 1.8 square meters in size, require the messages to be static for 10 seconds each and no animated movement such that you would normally see in a television picture, and also that the sign brightness be restricted so as not to cause nuisance effects with automatic dimming technology. And these are requirements that we have picked up from other municipalities such as the City of Barrie. We are also looking at increasing the spacing for billboard signs. I appreciate that the signs that I'm showing you an overhead picture of here predate our sign bylaw, and this is on Highway 26 close to Klondike Park, and you can see that these signs are 300 meters apart, and it's quite a lot visually when you're driving if you're doing 80 kilometers or more, and sometimes people do that. Those signs go by pretty quickly, and it's quite a lot. So we are proposing to restrict billboards. We are seeing quite a proliferation of billboards, and we're now starting to see them on a lot of our side roads and concession roads as well. And one of our official plan and one of our goals has typically been to keep our rural landscape and our agricultural landscape beautiful, keep clear view beautiful, so to speak. So we are looking to restrict billboards on only agricultural and rural lands, agricultural and rural zones on county roads and provincial roads only. We're also looking at increasing the separation distance to 2,000 meter radius between billboards. Again, the goal is to reduce the proliferation of billboards over time. Enforcement would be proposed to be during opportunities of redevelopment and enforcing billboards that were placed illegally without Ontario or without building permits. So the true benefit of a new sign bylaw for us is really on a go forward basis. So this is my funny little real estate sign here example. And just to say that the current bylaw restricts a property to single-sided or one double-sided sign. We're proposing to loosen that a little bit to allow one single or double-sided sign for every, now I've got to move this a little bit, every 30 meters of frontage. We're also looking at adding a sign size of 0.5 meters for residential and 3 meters squared for other properties. We're also looking at making some provisions for real estate developer signs. Currently, a real estate developer couldn't have a sign unless they already had a model home located on the property. We want to loosen that restriction a little bit and allow them to add signs on their vacant property. However, they couldn't also have a third-party billboard sign in their development land. So the intent here again is to reduce sign pollution, so it's one or the other. Also, the signage couldn't be on a truck body or a vehicle or something like that, and that is a current prohibition of the sign bylaw now, so that's not a new change. Now for downtown Stayner and Creemore, there were provisions added to restrict backlit signs. That's through a translucent material in the historic downtowns of Stayner and Creemore. Just as a note, Creemore by BIA already has that regulation in the current sign bylaw. And this also aligns with our community improvement initiatives. Awning signs are permitted. However, we've gotten a little specific about the type of awning signs that we would allow. These are all examples of the type of signage. They are a traditional shed awning as opposed to these here, which would be bubble awnings and various box type backlit awnings. These would not be permitted as signs. If someone wanted to have it as just an awning, they could do that. But if they wanted it as a sign, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. So now moving on to temporary and portable signs, there's quite a number of different signs covered in this section of the bylaw. We have A-frame signs, mobile signs, banner signs, flag signs, wire picket signs, and inflatable signs. And we're going to look at each one of these in turn. But I do want to say right at the beginning that community event signs are exempt from the sign bylaw. Of course, if they were doing a community event sign that required a building permit, that would not be exempt. They'd still have to get their permit, but they're exempt from the provisions of the sign bylaw. So that gives a lot of freedom there. And I'll just read quickly. We did add a definition for what would be an approved event, and that would be an exhibition, festival, or event that is either run by the township, financially supported by the township, or an event that has obtained a special event permit from the township. So that can cover quite a lot of concerns that some of our community groups may have in regard to this. So turning now to A-frame signs, the current bylaw allows a 4x4 foot A-frame sign, which is actually very, very large. And if the wind caught that, it could be maybe potentially dangerous. And it also allows a 2x3 foot sign. The new bylaw proposes to retain only the 2x3 foot sign. These signs are permitted anytime a business is open, and they're to be removed during closed hours. That is a current requirement. The current bylaw only allows one per lot, which is a bit of a challenge if you've got multiple businesses on a property. The new bylaw actually allows one per storefront, as long as there's a separation distance of 1.5 meters between the A-frame signs. Moving now to banner signs. They are currently permitted for 14 days in any one calendar year.
Mara, we just lost you. We lost your audio. Mara, we lost your audio.
I think we've lost your picture too.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Watch that, Mara.
No, I can't hear you.
Yes,
All right.
yes, you're good. You're good now. You're lost though.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. But
Thank
Mara, if you
Yeah.
watch can you see me on your screen? Do you see
I
me?
can see you, yes.
Yeah. So if I do this, it means
Yeah.
you've lost your audio, okay?
Thank you, thank you. Yes, this computer does have a habit of doing that. So just let me know if that happens again. Oop, I didn't want to start from the beginning, but we'll catch up real quick here. Okay, here we are. So on to banner signs, or back to banner signs, as the case may be. I'm gonna jump back to the full of the slide in case anything was missing from anyone listening. They're permitted for 14 days right now in any calendar year with a 20% coverage of the built wall space. We're proposing 7 days, twice per year, or 14 consecutive days, either one, once per year. And instead of 20%, we are looking to go a little bit smaller, which is 10% of the wall space, or a 10-foot by 30-inch wide banner. Again, just a reminder, this doesn't apply to community events. They can be whatever size they need them to be. Moving now to teardrop, feather, or flag signs. These are relatively new. I don't think they were around in 2008, but I could be wrong. So we have added a definition and regulation for them. And the proposal is that if you have 60 meters of frontage, you can have a flag sign for 30 consecutive days once per year. More than one business on a lot can have these signs. They are allowed up to 2 times per year, a maximum of to a maximum of 2 businesses. Just as a correction, I believe we had minimum of 2 businesses on the presentation that was online, but it's actually a maximum. Minimum wouldn't make quite a lot of sense. And also, we are looking at a minimum of 28 days between the use of these flag signs. Each flag sign has to be separated by 7.5 meters. And flags in themselves that don't have writing or advertising on them are not signs, so those are not restricted. For mobile signs now, we propose to restrict the use of mobile signs to outside settlement areas altogether. Part of the reason for that is we worked very hard towards creating a collective image of our downtown, an attractive image of our downtown, and these signs kind of take away from that. It's not as noticeable in the rural area because the spacing of them is substantial, whereas in town you would always have 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or whatever the case may be. Also, we do find that these signs find themselves into required parking spaces in town. Its lands are just more difficult to, it's more restricted in size. The current bylaw permits them twice a year. We're proposing them to a maximum of once a year for 30 consecutive days with a minimum of 28 consecutive days between the second use of them. So an example of that would be you could have them in December and then again in February, but you couldn't have it all of the month of December and January. Also, the mobile signs requirement of the bylaw regulates trailers and truck bodies regarding a size restriction, which is 5 square meters. So they wouldn't be allowed on vehicles as well. So just another point there. And then finally, we have our wire picket signs. Actually not finally, we have another one after this. These signs are currently only permitted for elections. Again, we've added the definition to the bylaw for these signs. And then the final, I think it's our final one, is the air-blown inflatable balloon type signs. And it's proposed that we prohibit these types of signs. Again, community events are exempt from this. We did have an open question I haven't received any public feedback on yet, and that is in regard to cannabis leaf signs. Staff is leaning towards making a recommendation to council to prohibit the leaf to be used in advertising, but we are seeking some feedback from council on that. But that is the recommendation we would bring forward. Going now to the Creemore BIA, we've actually proposed very few changes there. The existing provisions they have actually served quite well for the BIA area. We did add a prohibition on painting directly on the brick of buildings. This is, we agree that this can be quite beautiful, but at the same time, you know, very historic looking, but at the same time, once it's done, then we're kind of stuck with it. So if someone wanted to do that, that might be a situation for a variance. We also clarified that A-frame signs are permitted in the Creemore BIA area, whereas the current bylaw doesn't allow them, although the past practice has been to allow them. Now moving on to enforcement. The intent of doing this new sign bylaw first is to ensure that no new inappropriate signs are installed and that all signs obtain a permit, that the signs do not cause a health or safety issue, and that the signs do not cause sign pollution. Any sign located on municipal property can be removed immediately by the township. That is the current provision, has always been a current provision. Non-complying A-frame signs, banner, wire picket signs, flag signs on private property can also be immediately removed by the township. And all other signs require notice to the owner with a specified time period to bring the sign into compliance prior to the township being able to have the sign removed, and that would be done at the expense of the owner. An application to the courts to add Part 1 set fines to the new bylaw would also be proposed, and those would be the same as the current bylaw. Further on to enforcement, although the Municipal Act does not grandfather existing signs, it's not the anticipation of the township we would aggressively enforce the new bylaw. Compliance for all illegal signs that do not comply to both the old and new bylaw, however, could be enforced as need be. And of course, other opportunities that we talked about earlier with redevelopment projects would be taken advantage of to bring the property and the signs on the property into compliance. And that ends the presentation. I do have one correspondence from a member of the public that I have summarized the questions and also the answers to, if you'd like me to do that now.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate this is a long presentation and I apologize that it is, but really trying to get the public aware of all of the changes. So we received correspondence from Bob Charlton, and in summarizing his questions, his first question really was regarding the Stainer Lions Club and similar clubs and events, and they're using flag signs and other restrictions that the sign bylaw would have to them. So the proposed sign bylaw does exempt special events from the bylaw. They are, and I explained what they are defined as. So I believe that that hopefully addresses that concern. Another question is about the common practice of people attaching yard sale signs to utility poles and street lights and the restriction on that. The current bylaw today really doesn't allow yard sale signs. However, certainly people do put them on utility poles and on street signs. That is actually not permitted now, and the municipality could remove those at any time should they want. So we're not really changing the requirements of not being allowed to have them on municipal property or hydro property, but we are recognizing that someone could have a yard sale sign. They certainly might have them out on their own property. Also, we recognize today that many people use social media for having yard sales and things like that. So there are other means in which to advertise now as well. Another question was regarding how proactive the township will be on our enforcement. And again, enforcement is at the discretion of the municipality. I know some people don't like this analogy, but I still continue to use it. Is that it's sort of the same as people or as the police enforcing speeding. You know, it's not always a hard enforcement, but it is there for when things get out of control. I think that it's unrealistic to expect that every single sign, such as those posted on hydro poles, will be removed. However, when they become unsightly or due to public safety, certainly the bylaw will be enforced. Further, if the sign is located on township property, it doesn't necessarily have to be the bylaw enforcement officer that removes it. It may be on occasion roads crew or other people that work for the municipality. Mr. Charlton also suggests that the name and address of the owner be displayed on the sign for enforcement purposes. This is a requirement of our mobile home signs. It isn't a requirement for the smaller portable signs. I think for the people that are advertising selling hot tubs from Toronto or Barrie probably aren't necessarily going to do that anyway, and they're not complying anyway. However, they often have a phone number where we can reach them, and it is truly more difficult to enforce the sign bylaw on people that don't actually own property in the municipality. And generally, if it's simple enough for the municipality to collect the sign, that often works as a deterrent if we collect the sign as opposed to going through a means to charge. So it is a matter of discretion. There's 2 questions left in the submission with respect to set fines. Section 4.1 is the exemption section of the bylaw. And the question was, why is it not included in the set fines? Initially, I thought, well, it's the exemption section, so that's why it doesn't necessarily have to be included. However, these signs, if they were on township property, it may be possible that the municipality would want to follow up with a charge. So that is something to consider. These signs, however, may not be significant enough to undertake the paperwork in order to do that. And again, removal may just solve the issue. And the last question was regarding the cost of removal of signs to be billed back to the owner. This is also an existing requirement of the current sign bylaw. Having checked with the bylaw department, we do have a $100 property inspection fee that could be applied when we're out looking at a sign on a property. Further, if the sign is substantial enough, the township could hire a contractor to remove it, and this would also be billed back to the owner. Should council wish a higher fee for township removal of signs than $100, we could certainly look at adding that to the fee bylaw. And that concludes the correspondence we've received. Oh, and if I could, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, if I could just say that I have circulated the full written comments from Mr. Charlton to council through email. So you have it on record, and it will be in the follow-up report as
well. Thank you for that. I don't know who's controlling this question and public input received, but can we take that down now? Just so I can see all of council, so I can see who wants to speak or have questions about that.
Yes, I can do that as soon as I get that done. Goodness sakes. This is where I had trouble before, and now I'm having trouble again. Oh, there we go.
Very good. You were able to. Does anybody on council? I see that Councillor Leishman wishes to speak. Councillor Mckechnie.
Thank you.
Councillor Leishman, you're first.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Burton. I understand that we own one of those big blue inflatables that floats around and waves at you all the time. I guess we're going to be getting rid of that, are we?
Oh, if I may, through Deputy Mayor Burton.
Yes.
Thank you to Councillor Leishman. Special events are exempt and would be able to.
So we lost the last 2 seconds, but what she said, Councillor Leishman, was special events are exempt. So that would.
Okay.
So
I did have.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Leishman.
Okay, for signs that project out from the walls on Main Street. You suggest that stores that are down an alley or in the back of a store should have it on the wall flat. Is it possible for them to have a projected wall or a projected sign that's quite small instead?
Well, anything is possible, whatever council directs. I think the projecting sign provisions do apply to where you front onto a street, as opposed to like a side entrance. And I think you're right, for the side entrance, we have it just flat to the wall. But if council would like to see projecting signs on side entrances of buildings or rear entrances of buildings, we could absolutely add that to the bylaw.
Thank you. I would like that added to the bylaw, if council agrees, only because I know it's hard enough as it is to find businesses down the alleyways. And if we have at least a little arrow to the business that projects out and people can see it, it might be a little more visible. The other one is you have mobile signs and you have them only at 2 colors. Is there a reason for that?
Through the deputy mayor to Councillor Leishman, that is something that is in a lot of other municipal bylaws as well. And I think it's just so that it's not too distracting and that it's easier to read. But again, we are open if council wishes to have multiple colors. Sometimes what happens with these signs is they'll use a different color for every letter sort of thing. And it gets a little bit, yeah. So if you want to, we can remove the restriction altogether, or we can add and say no more than 3 colors. It's really at whatever council wishes.
Well, I not really have a preference. I was just wondering why we cut it down to 2 colors, but I'm okay. I was just thinking of letters that might be raised. You might actually have a color in there for a shadow to make it look dimensional, but I'm just sort of thinking my artsy terms. So I'm okay with 2 colors, but I was hoping that council would agree to have the signs come out from the walls, projecting from the walls for back entrances and side entrances. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Broderick, you had a question? Councillor Lamers, sorry, it was because I'm trying to follow my screen. So Councillor Lamers and then Councillor Mckechnie is after that. I see his worship has his hand and so does Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Deputy Burton. The temporary portable signs, how are we going to place them? Like we've had truck trailers and wagons out there for years. How are you going to mandate them down to 30 days?
Yeah, please proceed, Director Burton.
Thank you. Through the deputy mayor to Councillor Lamers. Actually, we probably could have been doing enforcement for quite a number of years now, but really it's been based on complaint-based enforcement up until very recently, where council has said we would like to be more proactive and again has hired an additional bylaw officer to help with that. So I think we will, it won't happen overnight. It will take some time, but I think we will be able to manage that.
Is that okay, Councillor Lamer?
So as we go forward, these signs are going to start getting cleaned up and that, and we're going to start cleaning up our township.
You can respond, Director Burton.
Well, I think that is the goal.
Thank you. Councillor Mckechnie, you were next.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, I like Connie's idea there of a small sign projecting from the wall when it's down an alleyway. It would have to be a small sign, but I think it's that's probably a good idea. I sent an email off to Mayor earlier today with some of my concerns and questions, and then I followed it up with an email to the rest of council, a briefer email, so to speak. So I'll just bring those items up here that just quickly, just so that the viewing public, can be aware of them. So basically that first item, the $100 charge, yeah, that's okay per sign permit. I think that's a little bit low. And especially when you consider, maybe some of the bigger signs, and I was sort of wondering whether we can maybe increase that, especially when the signs get to a larger size. I would rather see us have a $200 sign permit cost there fee. And also too, it would give the applicant the incentive to ensure that the signs are of a higher caliber, and that's my opinion. Regarding the real estate signs, in the proposed bylaw, it has some 30 meters apart. The 30 meters isn't very far. I was sort of hoping maybe 35, 40 meters. Just a thought. The cannabis leaf, I'm in full agreement that I don't think that we should have the cannabis leaf on the sign. I have no problem with cannabis sales. That's not an issue. I just would like to see the signs stay tasteful, and I just don't think that we need the leaf on there. The minimum setback of 100 meters for a billboard to be from a residence, 100 meters is not very far. That's pretty darn close. And these billboards are huge, and I'm just sitting here in my property and I'm just looking out, and if I had a billboard 100 meters away, I think it would really upset me. So I'm thinking 200 meters is probably better. Even that would upset me if it was 200 meters. Personally, I would like to see it 500 meters, but that's probably not realistic. But certainly a further distance than 100 meters. So 200 meters would be my suggestion. Regarding yard sales, I just think that we're giving them 72 hours to take their yard sale signs down. I think that's far too long. They can get them down within an hour after the yard sale is over. So I would rather see them have 24 hours. If somebody's got enough signs up that it's going to take them 72 hours to get them down, they're doing more than just a yard sale. So anyway, 24 hours would be my opinion on that. And the big one here is election signs. I think they're a blight on the landscape. I know I was probably the biggest offender in the last election, and but I don't think they really helped a whole lot. We just passed, as a municipality, we've just passed our single-use plastics bylaw. And I know a lot of the election signs, when the election's over, some of them get reused in the next election. A lot of them just get taken to the dump or to the recycling area. And so my preference would be to see election signs banned altogether. I know that we cannot do that for federal and provincial elections. I did hear on the radio that another municipality in the area has banned election signs for municipal elections. So I would like to see that looked into. If full out banning of the election signs is not something the council would support, then maybe restrictions to 35 signs per ward would be my suggestion. I think 35 is a reasonable number. It gets the candidate's name out there, and yet it doesn't cause a lot of sign clutter. Anyway, those are my opinions, and other than that, I'm really excited about the sign bylaw. I think that it's a great bylaw. I think we really do need to clean up some of the signs that are in the township here. So thanks very much, Mayor.
I believe that Councillor Patterson, you're next. Councillor Patterson, you had your sign up. Are you going to
unmute? Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, road signs can be a distraction for driving, and you did make reference to that. Did we have any reference, any framework that we used to determine just how distracting they can be in our roads, especially now that we're putting an extra effort in the reviewing our traffic? Will there be any kind of consideration, for example, within our comprehensive traffic study, or our traffic engineer, to review our sign bylaw? And I am particularly concerned about the digital signs. I'm not sure we need them anywhere, but I would hope that their placement would take into consideration particularly hazardous or unsafe traffic areas that we've noticed. And then I wondered if we're going to discriminate in terms of the actual content in the signs.
Director Burton, would you like to respond, please?
I will certainly try. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Councillor Patterson. I'm not aware of any research. I think in regard to research on distracting signs, probably the MTO would be our best guide. They're on the other hand, they can be quite restrictive. On the other hand, they also have permitted digital billboard signs on the highway. So we may be more restrictive in that case. Typically, having reviewed a number of sign bylaws through this proposal and for other bylaws that I've written for other municipalities, a lot of the standard stuff, such as not to be confused, not sort of standard motherhood statements, not to be confused with traffic signals, not to be confused with construction signs, not to be flashing or twirling, things like that would be some of the typical requirements of a bylaw, but I don't have my hands on any actual research as to what is or isn't considered distracting. I can tell you my own personal opinion with some of the flashing, very bright digital signs, I myself find distracting. So hence the provision about the light dimming and a lot of these things as well that we have done with our own digital sign because of the complaints that we've received from the public on our own digital sign. So I guess through our own experiences and through the experience of other municipalities. And then your other question, and I'm trying to remember it. I was trying to write it down as I was thinking of your question, but I can't recall. If you could help me with your second question.
It was regarding the actual content of the digital sign.
Yes, thank you. I ordinarily, the only things that we would typically control in content is there's a provision in the bylaw in regard to if it's offensive or profanity or things like that. And that is restricted now and would continue to be restricted.
Thank you, Director. Are you good there, Councillor Patterson?
I am. I will. The reason I asked the question about the framework safety hazard is I've gone through quite a few actually studies, methodologies of that problem. And what I've noticed is there's different models, and that's why I asked what the models were. So perhaps I can go through a couple of them that I think have merit in our case and send you the information I've picked up.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I believe, Your Worship, you're next. Thank you for your patience while everybody else was on the list.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor Burton. As this is a public meeting, we're not making any amendments to anything at this time, so council will have an opportunity to bring forward any amendments or changes, but certainly staff are listening as they receive both the public comments and the comments from members of this committee. So I've got a couple of questions and then comments as well. Ms. Burton, home-based businesses, right? They can still put up a little shingle sign indicating that they're a homeopathic practitioner or something like that. That's still a permitted use at a home-based business. Is that correct? To put up a sign?
Yes, through the Deputy Mayor to the Worship. Absolutely. Home occupation and home industry signs are permitted. They maximum size is 0.39 square meters. Which is about
pretty small, really. Yeah.
I think it's about 4 square feet, actually. So it's a little bigger. It's 0.39. I can do the math really quickly, thanks to my handy. Yeah, it's 4 square feet. So it's not.
That's 2 feet by 2 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple.
And the maximum height is 1.8 meters. Has to be set back 1.5 meters from an adjoining property line.
Okay. And also can't cause any type of traffic visual disturbance from the property line to, if someone's at an intersection, they can't have it blocking sight line. So that's falls underneath the highway traffic there. Okay, I've got a couple other questions and comments. Why are wicket signs that they're obviously in our community? They pop up at different times. These occasionally, a simple one that you might see is a realtor will put up one in a corner to indicate an open house, right, with an arrow on it. Or sometimes you'll see an auctioneer might be having an auction and have signs directing people that are coming to one of our community centers. Auction, the ones that I have seen also that frankly are filling our neighborhood sometimes around Stainer. When we're not in a COVID-19 situation, is golf club sales or sporting goods sales at some other community. Certainly I've seen them in Stainer, right at the Esso station, directing people to go to Cranberry Resorts for some golf club sale, and these picket signs get put in. How do we enforce that? Are we going to have our bylaw enforcement officers simply just remove that type of stuff? Because obviously they're not appropriate signs, or what's the policy on going to be on that? Yes, Ms.
Director, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the deputy mayor to the mayor. So if it's a real estate sign, they actually have some exemptions. So they may be allowed to do the little, and there are specific provisions in the bylaw that allow for that. If it's a community event or an event that's sanctioned by the municipality, has a special event permit, then they would be allowed to do those types of signs. If it's not one of those sorts of situations, then it would likely not be a permitted sign. And typically the municipality could just go ahead, the sign bylaw actually allows the municipality to go ahead and collect them. So we can just pick them up. We can take them back to the office. If we choose to hold on to those signs for a while, we can. We, however, don't have to do that. We can dispose of them.
Right.
Your
Okay,
worship,
so those are,
something else.
I've got a few items if I can, Mr. Chair. Is that okay?
Please proceed.
Okay, no problem. I've only got a couple more. Thank you, Ms. Burton. The one that has popped up in the last 12 months that I've seen a lot of is the A-frame signs that are, yay high for developments. And they are all across our community. Certainly at the intersection by the Colonial Regional Airport, there'll be signs there from Thursday right through until Tuesday. And sometimes they're literally laying in the ditch all week long, and the guys will show up and set them up again. So those A-frame signs are basically located right at an intersection. They potentially can be a traffic hazard. They're actually pretty substantial. These are not little, plastic signs. Some of them, if a vehicle ran over them, they might puncture a tire or cause something. Anyway, the point is those type of signs that are being placed, those need, in my opinion, need to be permitted through a permit, a sign permit. Is that the intention of this, that those type of development signs that are located across the community will have that?
Thank you for your question. It's a good question. I'm going to answer it in two parts if I can, because I have to look up the second part. So in regard to any signs that would be a danger or in a sight triangle or anything like that, those would be not permitted. And if our bylaw or our public works staff were inclined to, we would be picking those up. There are separation distances for A-frame signs for developers. They have to be no closer than, let me see, I had this right here. No closer than 75 meters to any other developer sign. So that hopefully will prevent the clustering of those A-frame signs. They can only have them out while the office is open. So if it's after hours, again, they can be collected by municipal staff. And then in regard to your question as to whether they need a permit for that. That one I am just looking up. Oops. Yes, they would. So this is where the simple $100 permit would come into play, where they would have to submit it to us, tell us this is what they were doing, so we would have a record of it. And if it met, then it would be okay. It wouldn't need a building permit though. So it would just be a simple permit so that we're aware of what's happening, and then we would say yes or no, whether it met the bylaw.
Okay, and sort of on that topic though, will the sign, while placed on our road, be insured by the owners for any type of liability if someone was to run over it and cause injury or damage to themselves?
Right. Now, I'm
That's
not
not our liability as the municipality. It would be the liability of the owner of the sign.
Yes. And when I answered your question, I wasn't thinking that it was on the municipal road allowance. So that's a
Certainly it would be. It would be on these are sitting on the shoulder of the road.
Yep, I absolutely understand the question. I just need to find out whether or not that would be permitted. So if you can just bear with me again.
Sure,
now,
no
some of your questions I may have to report back to you on in the follow-up follow-up report, but if I can get to it quickly enough, I will certainly do that.
All right.
I would think we can make that one of the conditions of the permit. When they have the permit, they have to be insured against any liability. I think that would be one of the
Well,
conditions.
particularly, Deputy Mayor, you're right, because if they're sitting on our road and it's not our property and it causes an injury or accident, or a cyclist or something, gets injured because of it, that's not our problem, right? I mean, it's somebody's left some debris on the road. So anyway, I think it's pretty obvious that we need to do that. If I can, I have one last quick one, which I have seen in other communities. I've traveled down Highway 7 heading towards Ottawa, or I've seen it in Northern Ontario. Some municipalities or some businesses will put up a flashing amber light that might be 12-volt DC powered at the end of their roadway, or at a sign, or at a temporary sign indicating they're open for business. I'm hoping that that's prohibited somewhere in our new bylaw. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. That's really all the questions I have on this. So I look forward to the report. I'll send it back to you, Mr. Chairman, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Broderick, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It was just a concern regarding actually one of Councillor Mckechnie's concerns. Number one, when you were talking about going from $100 to a $200 permit cost, just made me reflect on some of the discussions I had with businesses prior to COVID-19. When I was talking about for the town of Stinger. And one of the issues that came up was a business license at a nominal fee of $100. Interestingly enough, I got some pushback on that. And my concern is at $200, it would simply be seen by a lot of businesses as just a cash grab. That was my concern.
Thank you for your comment. Councillor Leishman, you had your sign back up, I believe.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that in regards to Mayor Measure's concern about it, if you're a company and you've got a sign and you put that sign out, you own that sign. And as far as I know, our liability insurance would cover our sign if it was ours. So I would think that any company that would put a sign out should have insurance, because if they're not, then that would be rather silly and not a very good thing to do. Anyway, that's my take on it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments they wish to make? Councillor Mckechnie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So regarding the $200 fee, I mean, it's just a thought. I think, if it's a smaller sign, fine, $100, but, some of these big billboards and everything, I think, we could certainly charge $200 for those signs. Anyway, just a thought. The question that I have for the Director of Planning is is this, whatever the fee is, $100, $200, $150, whatever, is that per sign? For instance, last summer, I was driving through Cashdown Corners and I sent the rest of council an email on this, and I counted no fewer than 40 signs at Cashdown Corners. Most of them were A-frame signs. There's not that many businesses there at Cashdown Corners, but there were no fewer than 40 signs along the road there. Anyway, so would we be looking at a $100 fee or a fee for each one of those signs? If is that the way that it works? Thanks.
Yes, Director, go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Mckechnie. Yes, actually. However, we wouldn't likely be issuing them that many because those signs would, mostly all of those signs wouldn't actually comply. But just to get to your question on the cost of a sign for billboards, billboard signs actually are required to get a building permit. And so the cost wouldn't be $100. We would actually apply the our building department costs for that sign. So we are achieving a fee for the review and the issuance of that through the building department. The proposal in that case wouldn't be an additional fee. The $100 is for those that don't require a building permit. So there is some recovery of cost of review under the building permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Was there anybody else who had any questions? Going once, going twice. I have one question. And when you referred to the bubble awnings, does that mean anybody that has an existing bubble awning would have to replace them?
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, could you please repeat that? My computer just muted on me as you were talking.
Sorry, my voice was muting at the same time. The bubble awnings you said will not be permitted, but what about people that have existing bubble awnings? Are they going to have to be removed?
Not necessarily. If they are using them as a sign, then it's likely that we wouldn't be going after that sort of enforcement. We're really looking at going after the ones that are causing more of a distraction, or maybe unsafe, or maybe causing a clutter sort of thing. Those would be the types that we would be going after first, as opposed to somebody who had an actual facade sign already installed and up and going.
So it's safe to say though that, I mean, any new applications or new signs, bubble things would not be allowed to have printing or signage on them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But the existing ones would likely be grandfathered in.
That's the approach that we are suggesting to council.
Very good. Is there anybody else that has any other questions? Bear with me for a sec, because I have to read this information. Okay. This concludes the public meeting with respect to the proposed sign bylaw. We thank all who submitted written comments and for their interest in this matter. All input received with regard to the proposed sign bylaw will be fully considered by staff in their recommendation and by council in their decision with respect to this bylaw. A report regarding the sign bylaw will take place at a later date concerning this matter. This concludes the public meeting portion of the agenda. And I'm happy to say that I will return the chair back to his worship.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Good job. Thank you also to Ms. Burton and all of the staff that have contributed to creating this this public meeting process, and also to our clerk's department for consulting to make sure that we could, in fact, host a public meeting. Council, and for the public, we will host other public meetings coming up. And so if there's issues that are of concern to you that you wish to make comment on, please pay attention to our website, as there will be a link there where you can then submit your written comments during public meetings held in this format. While it was comfortable to do it at this time, I'm really looking forward to getting back to doing our public meetings the way we used to do them. So thank you, Council, for your patience. All right, Council, we're going to move on. We have a report from the CAO with a motion. It's in regards to the extension of a lease agreement with Growmark at 220 Huron Street. The report's quite simple. It's a recommendation to extend the lease. So I'll read it to you, and then I'll look for a mover and seconder. And if the CAO is on board, he might want to jump in if he has anything else to say. Our recommendation be resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby one, pass a bylaw to extend the lease agreement with Growmark Inc. for a period of 1 year. Item 2, authorize staff to review and provide future extensions of the lease. provided such extensions do not extend the lease beyond an additional 1 year increments and do not exceed a cumulative total of 14 years, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the extension agreement and any future extension agreements. All right, council, so you've heard the motion. I'll look for a mover and seconder, and then we'll go to Mr. Sage. And that'd be Mr. Lamers, Mr. Broderick, and thank you for that, Mr. Sage. What do you got to say about this agreement?
Very little, Your Worship. Have brought some of these documents to council in camera before. This is the public portion of executing. For the public's information, we purchased this property 7 years ago, signed a lease agreement that had a 7-year term, and then it had a renewal opportunity of another 7 years. But due to the
Sorry, Steve, we lost your audio there.
Due to the possible redevelopment of that part of the community, council directed staff to ask Growmark to go year by year, and they've accepted. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. And so at this time, you expect at least another 1 year extension, and perhaps if they ask, you will hear about it when they ask. Is that basically how we're going to go?
Yes, and they are attempting to move their operation to their site in Elmvale, but difficult times, perhaps it's taken them a little longer than they expected.
I completely understand. Interestingly enough, that particular building and that site, the township's always looking for more storage, and so it is a future storage site at this time, and council and future councils will make a decision on the actual future disposition of what we do with that site down the road. But for now, we'll continue with this lease agreement. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Any questions of the CAO from members of council? Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll prepare to call the motion. We have a mover and seconder. Council, all those in favor?
Yes.
And thank you. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Okay. Moving on, we've got a couple of bylaws, and that'll wrap up our meeting. So bylaw number 20-38, it's the lease agreement extension for—
Your worship, your worship, if I may interrupt, the clerk is waving. I think she needs to say something.
Hello, Madam Clerk.
Hi, Your Worship. Sorry to interrupt the meeting. I just noticed that after the public meeting, we did have the report from the planning department that just needed a council approval.
I see what happened there is that's on this page, and I'm already on to the other page. So we have a report at the very bottom of the page. Council, it's item number 6, and it is CS 021-2020, the proposed new signed bylaw. Be it resolved that council of the township hereby one receive CS 021-2020 proposed new signed bylaw report for information. So this is only receiving the report. It's not establishing the bylaw. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Leishman. Council, you've heard the motion. We've had a good discussion on it. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Clerk, for pointing that out to me. Again, we're back on to bylaws. So that is on this page. Here we go. Bylaw number 20-38, the lease agreement extension for 220 Huron Street. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 20-38 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a lease agreement be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed on the 8th day of June 2020. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Mr. Walker. Council, you've heard the bylaw. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Bylaw number 20-38, 20-39 is an encroachment agreement for 329 Mowat Street North in Stayner. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw number 20-39 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an encroachment agreement be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally pass on the 8th day of June 2020. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Mr. Broderick and Councillor Leishman. Council, you've heard the bylaw. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 13 is the notice of motion that Councillor Patterson withdrew in favor of his previous report that was dealt with during wards. And so at this time, I have the confirmatory bylaw to read and then the notice of motion. Bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 20-40, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the June 8th, 2020 council meeting, be presented and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 8th day of June 2020. Mover and seconder, please. Mr. Broderick. And a seconder. Oh, it all went live there. It froze for a second and then there were all these hands up. Mr. Walker will be the seconder. Okay, council, all those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And that motion carries. And at this time, we have the motion to adjourn. I'll call for that motion to adjourn in just a moment. I just want to say that we are very much interested every day when we hear news coming out of the province of Ontario about how the restrictions for COVID activity are changing. As recent as today, we're going to be extended or be permitted to extend meetings of up to 10 people in one place at one time. I understand there's also some provisions for our church community to continue to host their services with the 30% of their occupancies in churches. And there's also opportunity for some businesses to reopen. The one that I am most looking forward to, and I'm sure all of you are, is the fact that we need to get a haircut. I need to get a haircut. Look at that. So I'm looking forward to definitely making my appointment with my neighborhood barber. So, council, we look forward to that too. It's also reassuring to know that all the work that's being done by our health unit, our Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, continues to monitor and track any and all cases, and we continue to see the numbers decline here in Simcoe. But we do need to remember to be vigilant and continue with social distancing and to be very careful. Certainly when I've been out shopping in different stores, people wearing masks, that's a good thing, I think, and so that's a good procedure. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from the province, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, I will be participating in a little phone call on Wednesday with the minister responsible for tourism, and so we'll hear some more comments there. Anybody else with anything for the good of Clearview Township? Looking for any comments? No? Okay, then I will read the motion to adjourn. Item 15 is the motion to adjourn. Recommendation be resolved that council meeting be adjourned at 7:38 p.m. Mover and seconder, please. Mr. Broderick and Mr. Burton. You've heard the motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. This motion carries, and so this council meeting is adjourned. Councillor Deneen, thank you for joining us. I know you've had some digital troubles there, but thank you for that. And I appreciate all of our staff that have joined us on this meeting as well, and all the work that they do to serve Clearview Township. Thank you, members of council. At this time, I'll conclude our meeting. Thank you.